I was on my porch swing, the gentle rhythm of familiar comfort, putting the finishing touches on a small, hand-carved bird for my grandson, Leo. The scent of lavender from my garden hung sweet in the afternoon air. My phone, sitting on the wicker table beside me, buzzed with a message. I smiled, assuming it was my daughter, Clara, with a last-minute detail about our trip. In 3 days, we were supposed to be leaving for a grand family vacation to a resort in Hawaii. My heart fluttered with a familiar, happy anticipation. The message was from Clara. My smile faded as I read the words. "Mom, so sorry for the late notice, but David and I have decided it would be best if this is a trip for just our core family." I read the text again, and a third time. The words didn't change. The small, wooden bird fell from my hands and landed silently on the porch floorboards. Our core family, Naima. Before I tell you what happened next, please hit that subscribe button for Stories from the Porch Swing, and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I truly love hearing from all of you. Now, let me tell you my story. That morning had started with such joy. The trip was a celebration of my daughter and son-in-law's 10th anniversary, and Clara had insisted I come. "It wouldn't be a family adventure without you, Mom," she'd said. "The kids would be heartbroken." I had packed my small suitcase days ago. A new floral sundress from the local boutique, a wide-brimmed straw hat, even a new pair of sensible sandals with good grip for walking on wet pool decks. I had baked 2 dozen of Leo's favorite oatmeal raisin cookies, each one wrapped carefully in wax paper and tied with a blue ribbon. Everything was ready. I was ready. Then came that message. Just a handful of words on a small glass screen, but they landed with the force of a physical blow. "It's just for our core family." The question burned in my throat, hot and acidic. "Clara, am I not core? Am I not your mother?" But my fingers were still. My phone silent in my lap. Instead of replying, I just sat there, the rhythmic creak of the porch swing the only sound. My mind drifted back. I remembered Clara as a little girl, her face pale with fever, and how I had held her through the night, singing lullabies until my own throat was raw. I remembered when her father, my sweet Robert, passed away so suddenly, and how I had worked 2 jobs, cleaning houses by day and bookkeeping by night, to make sure her world remained as stable and secure as I could make it, to ensure she could still go to the college she dreamed of. I remembered her wedding day, how proud I was, how I'd given her and David a small, beautiful watercolor painting of the church as a gift, my own little piece of art. Was I family then? Yes, I was essential. But now, it seemed, I was supplemental. I was an optional extra they had decided to cut from the budget. I walked slowly into my small house, my legs feeling unsteady. I went to the old roll-top desk in the corner of my living room and opened a drawer that was filled with important papers. Inside was a thick folder. The deed to the beautiful 4-bedroom house with the wraparound porch and the big oak tree in the backyard where Clara, David, and my grandchildren lived. The house, you see, belonged to me. 5 years ago, when they were just starting out, their credit was a mess and their savings were non-existent. They had found their dream house, but the bank wouldn't even look at them. I had just received the life insurance payment after Robert's passing. It was my nest egg, the money I had carefully set aside for my own old age, for my own security. I used every last penny of it to pay off the mortgage on that house for them. It was an outright gift, an act of love to ensure my daughter and her family had the secure start in life that I had always wanted for them. "Mom, thank you." Clara had wept, hugging me so tightly I could barely breathe. "We will pay you back every cent, I promise." But someday never came. The deed remained in my name. "It's just easier for tax purposes for now, Mom," David had explained a year or so later. "We'll get the paperwork transferred eventually. Don't you worry about it." Now, sitting at my desk, I finally understood. The paperwork was never transferred because this was more convenient. They had all the benefits of homeownership without any of the financial burden. They lived in my asset, a gift given freely, and I was now deemed not essential enough to be included in their quote, family. My hand, steady now with a cold, clear resolve, picked up the phone. I called my oldest friend, Diane, a sharp, no-nonsense real estate lawyer who had handled my affairs for 30 years. "Diane," I said, my voice sounding strangely calm, even to my own ears. "It's Helen. I need to ask you about the house I own on Willow Creek Lane. I want to sell it." There was a moment of stunned silence on the other end of the line. Then Diane, who knew the whole backstory, simply said, "Helen, if the deed is in your name and there are no other legal agreements, it is your property. You can do with it as you please." "How fast?" I asked. "If we price it right and find a cash buyer," she replied, "we could potentially close in a matter of weeks." That night, sleep was a stranger. My mind was a relentless projector, flashing images of 1,000 small slights I had brushed aside over the years. The way David would subtly roll his eyes when I told a story at the dinner table. The way Clara would always answer the phone with a rushed, "Can I call you back, Mom? I'm swamped," whenever I called just to chat. The birthday parties I was only invited to at the last minute, almost as an afterthought. The Christmas when they gave me a generic gift card to a big box store, while my grandchildren opened lavish, thoughtful presents. The countless weekends I had dropped everything to watch the kids so they could go on spontaneous getaways, and the equal number of times they were just too busy when I asked for help moving a heavy piece of furniture. I wasn't being bitter. I was finally being honest. To them, I was not a person. I was a utility. I was the emergency babysitter, the financial backstop, the emotional support system they could tap into when needed, and conveniently ignore when not. My love for them was a resource they had grown accustomed to exploiting. The next morning, I called Diane again. "I'm serious," I said. "List it, and price it to sell fast." Diane is a good friend, but she is a better lawyer. She didn't argue. "Let me make some calls," she said. "I know a young doctor and his wife who just moved to town. They've been looking for something in that exact neighborhood, and they're pre-approved for a mortgage well above what we'll be asking." 3 hours later, Diane called back. "They want to see the house tomorrow. They are highly motivated." I told them the current residents are on vacation. "Set it up," I told her. "I have a key." I drove to their house, my house, the next day. My hands were shaking as I unlocked the front door I hadn't used my key for in years. The house was immaculate, a testament to the cleaning service I knew my salary had indirectly paid for. It was filled with beautiful furniture, expensive electronics, and framed photos on every wall. As I looked closer, a cold, hard knot formed in my stomach. In all the recent photos, the family trips to the beach, the birthday parties, the holiday dinners, I was conspicuously absent. It was as if their family story had begun the day they moved into this house, and my role in the prequel had been edited out. I found a box of older photos tucked away in a closet, photos of me with a young Clara, photos from my own wedding to Robert. I was a relic of a past they had moved on from. In Clara's home office, a space I had never been invited into, I saw her laptop was open on the desk. Call it an invasion of privacy, call it a desperate need for understanding. But I looked. Open on the screen was a spreadsheet titled Family Budget and 5-Year Plan. It was a detailed accounting of their finances. There were columns for David's income, for Clara's part-time salary, for their expenses. And then I saw it, a line item under the assets column. It read, Helen's house equity, est, value $400,000. The breath left my body in a painful rush. They hadn't just been living in my gift. They had been counting it. They had absorbed my life's savings into their own net worth, a silent, foundational number on a spreadsheet, while simultaneously pushing the woman who provided it to the absolute margins of their lives. An hour later, the young couple arrived. Their names were Mark and Sarah. He was a pediatrician, she was a teacher, and they were expecting their first child. As they walked through the house, their eyes lit up with a genuine, unpretentious joy. "This is perfect," Sarah said, her hand resting on her growing belly. "The backyard would be so safe for a little one to play in." "We've been searching for months," Mark added, a hopeful look on his face. "This is exactly what we've been dreaming of." They made an offer on the spot, for the full asking price. "We can close in 10 days, Mark said. "We've been staying in a cramped rental, and the baby is due in 6 weeks. We'd love to move in as soon as possible." I looked at Diane. She gave me a subtle, professional nod. This was as good as it gets. "I accept your offer," I said, my voice clear and steady. Just like that, it was done. Diane handled all the legal work with her usual ruthless efficiency. "Are you absolutely sure about this, Helen?" she asked me 3 times during the process. "Yes," I answered each time, my certainty growing with each signature. I had never been more sure of anything in my life. The papers were signed. The money, a sum that was more than I had seen in my entire life, was transferred to my bank account. Mark and Sarah would receive the keys in 10 days. It was the exact day Clara and David's Hawaiian vacation was scheduled to end. The timing was, I had to admit, poetic. But I wasn't a monster. I wouldn't leave them completely stranded. I hired a moving company, paying them a generous bonus for a rush job. I instructed them to pack every single item in the house with care and transport it to a large, climate-controlled storage unit. I paid for 3 months of storage in advance. I kept nothing. Every pot, every pan, every photograph, every piece of furniture went into those boxes. When the house was completely empty, I went back one last time. I walked through the echoing, empty rooms. The walls were bare. The floors were swept clean. This house had been my ultimate gift of love. But I had finally learned that love should not be a one-way street. It should not require you to make yourself smaller and smaller until you disappear. As I stood in the empty living room, the late afternoon sun streaming through the windows, I wrote a letter. Clara and David, asterisk. The house on Willow Creek Lane, the one you have been living in, has been sold. As you have always known, the house was my property, paid for in full with the money my husband and your father, Robert, left for my security. When you informed me that I was not considered part of your core family for your vacation, I finally understood my true place in your lives. I was a convenience, not a mother. Your belongings have been carefully packed and moved to the Oak Street Storage Facility, Unit 214. I have paid for the first 3 months. After that, the responsibility will be yours. The key to the unit is with my lawyer, Diane Miller. Her contact information is at the bottom of this letter. Do not try to contact me. I am going away to build a life for myself, a life where I am not an afterthought. Just as you wanted your vacation without me, I now need a life without the constant, quiet pain of being treated as if I do not matter. Perhaps someday you will understand the depth of what you have broken. Perhaps not. Either way, I must now take care of myself. It is long overdue. Goodbye, asterisk. Mom, I placed the letter in an envelope and left it on the cold, granite countertop of the empty kitchen, the very first place they would look when they came home. The day after the closing, I packed my own suitcase. But I wasn't just packing for a trip. I was packing for a new chapter. I drove to the airport, the same airport where I had once dropped Clara off for her college adventures, and I bought a one-way ticket to Portland, Maine. My old college roommate, Maria, had been living there for 40 years. We had kept in touch through Christmas cards and the occasional long phone call. When I had called her 2 days earlier and explained, in the briefest of terms, what had happened, her response was immediate. Get on a plane, Helen. My guest room is waiting for you. As the plane climbed above the clouds, leaving my old life behind, I felt a lightness I hadn't experienced in years. It was the exhilarating, terrifying feeling of a clean slate. At 62 years old, I was finally, for the first time, putting myself first. I turned off my phone. Whatever storm was about to break when Clara and David returned home, I didn't want to be in the middle of it. I needed this time. I needed this distance. Maine was a balm to my wounded soul. Maria, a boisterous, life-loving artist with a wild laugh, was the perfect antidote to my family's cold indifference. She didn't let me wallow. We spent our days walking along the rocky coastline, the salty air sharp and clean. We ate lobster rolls at noisy seaside shacks, our fingers greasy with butter. We explored quirky art galleries and spent hours in cozy bookstores. You look different, Maria said to me one evening as we sat on her porch, watching the lighthouse cast its steady beam across the dark water. Like a weight has been lifted. It has, I admitted. I didn't realize how heavy it was until I finally put it down. 3 days into my stay, Maria's phone rang. It was Clara. My daughter, in a panic, had evidently started calling my friends. Maria looked at me, her eyebrows raised. Do you want to talk to her? I shook my head. No, not yet. Let her wonder. Let her worry. Let her feel, for just a moment, what it's like when someone you count on simply disappears. We were on a boat the next day, on a whale-watching tour, when I finally decided to turn my phone back on. The screen lit up with a terrifying, almost comical number of notifications. 43 missed calls from Clara, 37 frantic text messages, 15 voicemails, each one more desperate than the last. I didn't listen to them. I didn't read them. Instead, I sent a single, simple text message to my daughter. I am fine. I am safe. Do not look for me. I need time for myself. I will contact you when, and if, I am ready. Then I turned the phone off again. How do you feel? Maria asked, watching my face. Strong, I said. And to my own surprise, I meant it. The rest of the month in Maine was a revelation. Maria introduced me to her vibrant community of friends. I joined her pottery class, and my hands, which I had thought were only good for baking cookies and soothing fevers, discovered the simple, profound joy of shaping a lump of wet clay into a beautiful, functional bowl. I, who had spent a lifetime nurturing others, was finally nurturing my own dormant creativity. One night, Maria said something that stuck with me. Helen, you know what your problem was? You confused love with servitude. You thought being a good mother meant you had to erase yourself completely. But that's not love. That's just disappearing. Her words were a key, unlocking a truth I had been too afraid to face. I had made myself smaller and smaller, trying to fit into whatever little space Clara and David had left for me. I had been disappearing, piece by piece, for years. I'm not going to be small anymore, I told her, my voice full of a newfound resolve. Good, she said, squeezing my hand. Because you are far too magnificent to be small. When I finally returned to my quiet apartment after a month away, I found a stack of letters slipped under my door. They were all from Clara. I made myself a cup of tea and sat down to read them. The first few were angry, filled with accusations and self-pity. How could you do this to us? We have nowhere to live. The kids are traumatized. But the later letters were different. The anger gave way to a bewildered confusion. And then, finally, to a fragile, dawning sense of remorse. Mom, I'm starting to understand. Asterisk one of them read. I talked to a counselor. She helped me see our dynamic, how we treated you. I am so sorry. I am truly, deeply sorry. The last letter was the shortest. I love you. I miss you. Please, when you're ready, I just want to talk. I want to make this right. I folded the letters and put them away. I wasn't ready yet. But for the first time, I thought that maybe, someday, I could be. Instead of calling her, I did something for myself. I enrolled in a Master Gardener program at the local community center. I had always loved my small garden, but now I wanted to learn, to grow, to cultivate something that was entirely mine. The next 6 months were a period of quiet, intentional growth. The Master Gardener program became my passion. I learned about soil composition, about native plants, about the patient, cyclical rhythms of the natural world. I made new friends, people who were passionate about the same things I was. My small backyard garden was transformed into a lush, vibrant oasis. I finally agreed to meet Clara. Just her, not David. We met at a neutral, public park, halfway between my apartment and the small, cramped rental house they were now living in. When she walked toward the park bench, I almost didn't recognize her. She looked thinner, tired. The easy, entitled confidence she had always worn now replaced by a hesitant uncertainty. Hi, Mom, she said quietly. Hello, Clara, I replied. The conversation was awkward, painful, but for the first time, it was honest. She told me the truth about why she had excluded me from the cruise. It was David's idea. He felt I was overbearing, that I judged their parenting. And she, afraid of conflict, afraid of upsetting the delicate balance of her marriage, had chosen his comfort over my feelings. I was a coward, Mom, she whispered, tears running down her face. I chose the easy path, and I let him convince me it was the right one. And I'm so sorry. I didn't offer easy forgiveness. I didn't say, it's okay, because it wasn't. Sorry doesn't fix it, Clara, I said, my voice gentle but firm. It doesn't erase years of being treated like an afterthought. All you can do now is be better. Show me you love me by respecting me. I will, she promised. I'll spend the rest of my life making this up to you. Over the next few years, things slowly, cautiously began to change. Our relationship was rebuilt, not on the old, rotten foundation of obligation and guilt, but on a new, healthier foundation of mutual respect and clear boundaries. Clara and David were both in counseling. David wrote me a long, heartfelt letter of apology, acknowledging his role in the dynamic. I started seeing my grandchildren again, but on my terms. We would meet at the park, or I would take them to the community garden where I now managed a large plot and taught a class for children. They went home at the end of the day, and I went home to my own quiet, peaceful life. It was a balance that worked. I started a small, successful business from my garden, selling artisanal jams and bouquets of rare flowers at the local farmers market. My life was full. It was my own. For my 65th birthday, Clara, David, and the kids threw me a party. It was a simple affair in the backyard of their new, smaller house, a house they were paying for themselves. When it came time for the toast, David stood up, his glass raised. I want to make a toast, he said, his eyes finding mine across the yard. To my mother-in-law, Helen. A few years ago, I made a terrible mistake. I failed to see the incredible gift we had in her. I failed to value her, and I encouraged my wife to do the same. We learned a very hard, very public, and very necessary lesson. Helen taught us that family isn't a one-way street. She taught us that love requires respect. So today, I'm not just toasting her birthday. I'm toasting her strength, her courage, and her willingness to teach us how to be a better family. As our glasses clinked, I looked at my daughter's face, which was shining with tears, but this time, they were tears of gratitude. I looked at my grandchildren, who were smiling at me with a simple, uncomplicated love, and I knew in that moment that selling the house had not destroyed my family. It had saved it. That cruel text message had been a doorway. Walking through it was the most terrifying thing I had ever done. But on the other side, I didn't just find a new life. I found the one that had been waiting for me all along. A life where I was not just a mother, not just a grandmother, but Helen. A whole person. A woman who was, at long last, the core of her own beautiful and ever-growing world.